Another area that genre affect is description and details. So every genre's setting, tone, and style affect how you describe characters' appearances and clothing. Fantasy is known for lush, rich, detailed descriptions. Mystery is known for a specific tone that it tends to bring to descriptions. Same thing with thriller. Sci-fi has a little bit of both. Romance definitely varies depending on what subgenre you're writing. But when you are writing descriptions of characters and the world, think about the genre that you're writing, do some research into the genre that you're writing and how those genres tend to handle descriptions. Lit RPG is different in that you have to help the reader track the character stats. You have to present that to the reader in a way that they're going to understand. What kind of stats are in your game world? What kind of clothes is the character wearing? Are these clothes a trackable thing? Like he gets your lit RPG character gets certain boosts or mods or buffs depending on what they're wearing. Romance often includes high focuses on characters' appearances and how they dress because that's part of what drives the pacing in romance is appearance and how people present, which is frequently related to appearance. Sci-fi and fantasy, you are describing a completely different world to the reader, generally, depending on the kind of science fiction and fantasy that it is. So you have to describe things that you wouldn't have to describe in contemporary romance. Because if you're writing a contemporary romance set on Earth, everyone knows that trees mostly have green leaves. There are a few with different colors, but in the summer, most trees are going to have green leaves and some sort of brownish bark with a few variations like birch trees. In fantasy, maybe your character's walking down a street where trees have bark that is orange and leaves that are blue. You have to bring these worlds to life for your characters in ways that you don't have to in stories set on Earth. Lit RPG, in addition to details and stat tracking, you're also describing the world that is presented there, which may or may not be completely different to a character. And mysteries and thrillers, if they're set on Earth, which most are, then you don't have to put as much effort into describing the world. Depending on if they're historical or not, you do have to put more effort into describing what was different about the world then as opposed to now. But you don't generally have to go really deep into world building description because everyone knows how cars move in general. Even if they don't understand why, they know how it works. So, what mysteries and thrillers tend to describe is more the atmosphere of why the characters are feeling like this. Every genre has differences in the tone of how things are described and how details are tracked. So you might not want to put all kinds of lush description into a contemporary romance. Now, you might want to, but instead of using more fantasy or historical words, you might consider using more modern words. If you are lavishly describing a small town, some readers might get bored because that's not really what they expect from a contemporary romance serial. But if you're using modern words and you're just describing this aspect in this episode and this aspect in this episode, you can get away with some longer description as long as you are building a world that they feel they can inhabit or that they understand, and especially one that is relevant to the story. If your serial is a romance serial in a small town and you're describing the various businesses that are going to come in throughout this serial, that's relevant to the story. In a lit RPG, are you describing terrain that your character is going through? That's relevant to the story. In sci-fi, are you telling us about an alien race that we haven't met yet and aren't going to meet for 30 chapters? It might not be relevant to the story right now. You If there's some plot point that is going to hinge on them, you can maybe mention them, but save the description for later so you're not bogging the reader down in needless description. So, genre is always going to affect how you describe things, how you track details, and how you present your story world. Even if it's a contemporary world here on Earth, it's still a story world to the reader.